All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ, here on the Tennessee Vols Sports Guys, here every Sunday night on this very program. No Ethan Stone this week, no Jack Foster. Jack Foster should be back next week. Ethan will be back soon enough as well, but Ryan Schumpert of Rocky Top Insider is here. Ryan, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to get on and talk about an eventful week for Tennessee sports, and I'm excited to be back in Knoxville after spending 20 plus hours on the road this week covering some Tennessee basketball. So glad to have a nice, easy Sunday, enjoying some NFL football, and ready for the week ahead at home.
There we go. Taping this halftime of Packers Cowboys, which might get interesting in the second half with the big touchdown at the end. Get the ball first. We'll see. Y'all, the listeners will already know because this will be up after this game's over. But either way, Ryan Schumpert, there was some Tennessee stuff that happened over the weekend. Main thing here, we'll get into some football and then continue our baseball player spotlight series. After doing Drew Beam last week, Dylan Dreiling this week, who's my dude, one of my dudes. I've got several dudes jotted down here. Even though you've tried to ruin my week with a certain starting pitcher you think might be in the rotation that I'm not going to address on this very program because, look, it's you got to keep your inner peace, and that's what I need right now. Ryan Schumpert, but 24 hours after we do this during the college football season, 24 hours after the Tennessee goes into Athens and wins a tough game, a lot tougher than I thought it was going to be, especially with how the first half was rolling. Zakai with a really aggressive and mean steal and layup at one point where I thought it was just going to be it, where I thought Tennessee was going to go on a roll and they were just going to kind of coast the rest of the way, and they very much did not do so. But your biggest takeaway, you're still thinking about from Vols Dogs 24 hours removed from the Steg, Ryan Schumpert.
Probably just that Tennessee doesn't win that game last year after the way they fell behind in the second half. And, I think that's probably for a multitude of reasons, but, chief amongst them, and number one, is just Dalton Knecht. And just a different gear that he gives this Tennessee team. And we've said it from the jump. We saw it at Wisconsin when he really iced that game away in the last minutes going ISO. We saw it against Illinois when in the middle 10, 12 minutes of that game, Tennessee couldn't make anything, and then he just hit a bunch of shots in a row, and it just freed everybody up. And we saw it earlier this week at Mississippi State in the game that Tennessee didn't end up winning, but climbed back from down 13 in the second half to tie the game at a couple different times, most notably with 35 seconds left only to lose there in the last 10 seconds or so. And just what he does for this Tennessee team, and when everything was going wrong offensively for the first, we'll say 12 minutes of the second half, he just made enough baskets where it didn't get completely out of hand, even though Georgia, at one point made 8 of their first 12 threes in the second half. They couldn't miss from deep. And obviously Tennessee fell behind by 11, so it wasn't like they were just right in the thick of it the whole time, but they never got out of range. And then because of that, when their defense finally locked in and stepped up in the last 5 minutes, and Dalton Knecht kept on scoring, they were able to erase the deficit and get a big win on the road. And you just saw a veteran Tennessee team, and we talked about it last week. It's been one of my big talking points with this Tennessee team of you might not have one guy. Now this week we feel a lot better about Tennessee having one guy in Dalton Knecht, but you have a bunch of different dudes that can step up, and on a day where Josiah Jordan-James was really bad and Santiago Vescovi wasn't great, which would be the two elders, statesmen you would think of on this Tennessee team, Zakai Ziegler was really good in the second half. Jonas Adu, who played all 20 minutes in the second half, was really good and just elite defensively down the stretch, as was Jemai Meshack, who did Jemai Meshack things on the defensive end. And you saw a Tennessee team keep fighting and find a way to win in the last 5 minutes, where a young, inexperienced Georgia team, who a lot of young players to really like on that Georgia team, and I think will be an NCAA tournament team, if not this year, and I probably wouldn't think they will this year, but before too long, and kind of their first big-time taste against a top-level SEC team, in some ways kind of fold at the end.
And I hope Danny White took note of what his brother instituted at the Stag, which was just the visuals of all the college kids just being on top of these players. And Tennessee was rattled, and I don't think that happens in the old Stegman Coliseum, and I don't think that happens in a lot of venues, but because you're not going to believe this, putting a bunch of rowdy college kids up close near the court on a Saturday afternoon tip, will get people energized and will create a hostile atmosphere, especially when you're an underdog, 9-point dog going in this game. And that kind of was a sneaky big difference. So, I mean, I've joked about TBA just being a sleepy venue, but it's true. You look at that atmosphere and you look at the Steg, and look, man, that needs to change. And I don't care which wealthy donor, whoever up close, is going to have to move back for these big time games. Maybe you just pick and choose. Like, you can stay in those spots on Tuesdays or whatever. But every big game, we're moving the seating chart. We're doing stuff like what Georgia did on Saturday, because you see it can make a difference in the right circumstance. And I think Tennessee was clearly not prepared for that kind of environment. And when they got hit in the mouth and that run happened, and Georgia's just making a lot of threes, and it just is kind of reeling. Like, they were chompy, and Zakai obviously was saying stuff, but I loved Zakai getting the last laugh at the end. But you could tell it was getting contentious between the Vols and what was going on around them.
No doubt. And to that point, starting on the Tennessee side of things, Danny White, if you're going to take $20 million to put the Food City name on the building, like, let's put the students in better seats. And not only have they not put the students in better seats, they have worsened the home court advantage by giving them less seats in the lower bowl and splitting them up on two different sites. I mean, everything they've done, or everything Danny White has done for the environment at TBA has not been, respectfully, Food City Center, sorry, Danny, has not been great. And to your point, yeah, I mean, it was night and day. Like, this was the third game I've covered in Stegman Coliseum, and it was absolutely completely different than the other two environments. And look, one of those games you'll remember 2 years ago was the last game in the Tom Crean era. So yeah, obviously it wasn't going to be a good environment. But the other year was Anthony Edwards' year, and it was early in SEC play, and Georgia was very much a bubble team, and there was a pretty good crowd there that night, and significantly worse environment. And another, not that Tennessee needs to implement this or anything, but another, to your point of Mike White doing some things to help student attendance and stuff, they have been having fraternity and sorority 3-on-3 basketball tournaments at halftime of all their games this season. They were into the semifinals. So clearly it has been a big emphasis of Mike White to get a lot more student attendance at this game. That gives them the better seats. And as he said post-game, it was by far the loudest he's heard Stegman Coliseum in his a year and a half there. And, whatever it was, I guess, 8-9 years visiting as the Florida head coach.
No, and they deserve credit for it. I mean, Georgia fought hard. I thought one of the things I thought coming in that did not, it's hard to say, and I kind of would rather watch it back to see how much of this was even feasible in live game action. But like, you saw and you saw the cutting, you saw Tennessee just driving past these Georgia bigs. I didn't think Georgia's bigs were good in this game. I thought they were soft. I didn't think they were good at all. And I thought that's where Tennessee could attack with Jonas Aidoo and company, that they should feast. That's why I thought Tennessee would actually win and cover here. I mean, Aidoo, you talked about, he was tremendous in the second half, especially defensively. But I was surprised at how much they didn't go inside, and how much Tennessee just kind of got in their own heads, where it's like, just go at these dudes. They can't handle it. And you saw when Knecht and Zakai decided, we're just going to make them foul us every single time we're going inside, because they didn't have an answer. And it was just kind of like, I just felt like they were in their own heads a little bit, because Knecht, it's just like, they have nobody for you, Knecht. Like, there's no one on the floor right now who can do anything with you one-on-one. You clear out on that side, and Knecht was just either going to get fouled or he was going to shoot over somebody. And I thought that was a big part of it. And the other part too, that I don't know if Barnes has talked about this or you've asked about this, Ryan, but we were talking in the group chat where I was like, I don't have the number in front of me, but my guess is Zakai was the hand in the face for the majority of those Georgia threes. And then Georgia, like, that's the other part of this. You usually lose games when the team shoots as well as Georgia did from three. Like, 9 times out of 10.
14 threes at home.
Yeah, like, you're going to lose that game 9 times out of 10. Like, Tennessee stealing that victory, a lot of that was just because the math wasn't mathing, and you're doing it in your head. You're like, that was my biggest worry in the second half. I'm like, teams don't win on the road when the home team is shooting this well from three, and Tennessee's just not that kind of, like, I don't know. The math wasn't mathing, and they find a way to win, and they deserve a lot of credit because, I mean, friend of the pod here on the College Basketball Weekly, Will Warren, he tweeted out, like, either Tennessee saves their season here in the second half, like midway through, or we're getting ready for football and baseball season, and this team checks out, and this is like a collapse that just destroys the rest of the season because of the nature of it, and you could just see how this could spiral based on how people were playing. And they responded with, I think, just one of the more impressive Barnes wins because of the math, because of how well Georgia was shooting from deep, and to not get completely discouraged. And also just keep your composure. Like Knecht and Sakai were like, nope, we're going to go ahead and ice this. We're going to take care of business. Jonas, I do going to do stuff on the defensive side. And also Barnes being like, hey, Triple J, you don't have it at all today. We're going Meshack down the stretch here, because Meshack is the most steady Eddie guy you have on this team. Is exactly, it doesn't matter if you put him in 2 minutes to go, 18 minutes to go, whatever, you are getting the exact same Jemai Meshack experience, and and you can count on him. And there's just moments where you have to go with guys you can count on. And I applaud Barnes going Meshack, because I still have said on this podcast, you know what I'm about to say, he's one of your best 5. Like, there's just no way around it. Jemai Meshack is one of the 5 best players in Tennessee this year.
It was a no-brainer for sure to go Meshack over Josiah, and you almost wish that he would have given Jemai a little more run, especially late in the first half with 2 fouls. And
yeah,
I guess the problems there late in the first half were more offensive than defense, so maybe it wasn't as glaring at the time. But I did say, I sent a text at halftime to someone. It was like, Jemai needs to play more than Josiah in the second half. Like, you just know, you can just tell with Josiah. It's offense is just streaky. And now I do think some of the stuff that he did uncharacteristically, besides missing shots, started happening more in the second half. He started pressing when Georgia, jumped out on Tennessee early. But, to your whole point of Tennessee winning that game and defying the math, it's because their offense is so much better. And it's because of the fact that they scored 1.2 points per possession, and they had 42 points at halftime, despite the fact that they didn't score the last 4.5 minutes. And that's something I've written about, and I think I said on here last week, where Tennessee, it's not like they're just not liable. They're to have 4 or 5 minute stretches where their offense looks bad, but they play faster, and their offense, when it's at its best, is just so much better than it was last year. They can overcome those, and some of those are just like very few teams in college basketball don't have, stretches for a few minutes, through one media timeout a game where they just don't look good offensively. So to me, that was one of the big differences of it. And, I think you were definitely right. That's almost what made the game so infuriating for Tennessee defensively when they were losing it, is that Georgia had no rim presence. Offensively or defensively. You're talking about defensively. They didn't have it offensively either. And
yeah,
first, and as it went on more, it was more Georgia playing good offense and getting Tennessee off on their rotations, because, like you said, Tennessee was flying by. Sakai was trying to overcome the fact that he wasn't able to close out very well while staying in front of guys just because of how small he was, and he'd go flying by. It almost felt like the Loyola Chicago game, where Loyola hit a few shots in that game, and Tennessee just went flying past closeout after closeout, and then the rotations were off the rest of the game, or the rest of possessions when that happened. But I say all to say, early in the second half, like, Tennessee just lost guys. They just lost 3-point shooters playing over help, when it's like, Georgia doesn't have anybody you need to fear going to the basket. So that's what almost made it frustrating. Tennessee obviously adjusted and pulled out the win. And it's kind of funny, for the first time, I guess probably since the Grant Admiral year, you leave a week where Tennessee went 1-1 on the road. They win one that they should have won, but at the same time, like, it looked like they were going to lose, and they lost one that was, basically a toss-up game. They were 1.5 favorites, I think, by the time they got to tip-off at Mississippi State, and you left it saying, yeah, the offense was good this week. The defense is why they lost the game that they lost, and it's why they would have lost the game that they won if they hadn't pulled it out in the end.
No, and I think you won't find. I think it's gonna be hard for Tennessee to top this kind of win, where they're gonna have some other big wins here. But I think to come back the way they did and to withstand everything that Georgia threw at them, I think was impressive. But it's also just the Knecht factor you just can't overlook. Like, that's a big part of this. It's like, you had Julian Phillips last year, and he's obviously not someone you could have counted on that spot. And Tennessee has just been looking for the last couple really good Rick Barnes teams. Like, these last couple years have been elite good Tennessee basketball teams, but they have not even had anyone close to Dalton Knecht offensively. Like, there's not even any, like, you have Kevin Durant just over here. He's like cold-blooded and talking about that. Yeah. Like, it's just different. Everybody knows. It's like the ball knower. It's like the bus meme where it's like,
that boy nice.
Yeah, that's just Dalton Knecht, where it's like, because he'll do some crazy stuff. He'll airball something in the corner, and he'll do something that I just know drives Rick Barnes absolutely through the wall. But it's like, hey, he also does stuff where he just saved your season. Like, Dalton Knecht single-handedly was like, all right, let's stop messing around. I'm just going to pull up from 3. I'm going to just drive over and over again. I'm just going to use my crazy wingspan and just do whatever I want offensively to win us this basketball game. And also just make a bunch of clutch free throws and just not be phased. Like, that dude is just not, he loves adversity. and he loves you getting in his face and doubting him. Like he's like Jordan Love this afternoon in Dallas. He's got that dog in him. Like Dalton Knecht is. He's a Final Four type player. Like he's the one you need in March where it's like he can save these spells, and Tennessee just hasn't had somebody like what Dalton Knecht can be in it when he's on.
100%. And a couple of thoughts when I'll start with. You better believe Rick Barnes brought up that airball 3 in the corner post game.
Did he really?
Like he said we drew up that play. We wanted him to get to the basket. You know, I didn't like that shot, but besides that, the 36 points was great.
I love to your point that the 36 points. It's like, dude, it's a con, but like,
well, he didn't actually say that, but or that part of it, he did bring up the 3 and say.
But you know what bothered him? Like he thought about.
Oh, it 100% bothered. And he talked more, or not more. He talked, if not just as much, 40% of the time he talked about Dalton Knecht yesterday. He talked about how happy he was with the effort he showed on the defensive end. Mm-hmm. Like it's just how he looks at it. He's like, the offense is great. Like that's just what you know is going to happen. And you're 100% right of the number of things that he can do and the different ways that he can score. And even, again, like when I talked about that stretch, the first 12 minutes of the second half where Tennessee wasn't good offensively, like a lot of the shots he hit like were not high probability shots. Like he hit multiple contested mid-range shots where he just bailed Tennessee out on bad possessions. And everything you said is right about how he just changes the dynamic of this Tennessee team. And that was the 3 he hit to take the lead, 8 seconds into the shot clock, contested, big man closing out deep. I didn't realize until going back and watching it today, like it was a deep 3 too. It wasn't just a normal 3. Like that is Final Four, like winning in March basketball. But to your other point, which I think is so easy to overlook, you mentioned Zakai getting into it a lot. Dalton was getting into it a lot with Georgia guys during the game too, and was getting a lot of talk. And Tennessee clearly did a phenomenal job of scouting Dalton Knecht and figuring out okay, this is the dude this dude's really good and he can fix a lot of our offensive issues. There's no way they could have ever known that he could have had this just cold-blooded killer nature in him, where a kid who grew up in Thornton, Colorado, not quite a basketball hotbed, played at a junior college for 2 years, played in the Big Sky for 2 more, would come into the SEC and play 4 games on the road and be averaging 31 points in them. Like he lives for the moment. The moment's not too big for him. He wants it in that stage. And again, that's where Tennessee, obviously there was a ton of stuff that went really well, and they did a great job of evaluating Dalton Knecht and identifying him as a guy. I don't mean to take any credit away from the coaching staff for doing that, because obviously they deserve a ton of credit, but you never could have known that he could approach the moment and have that dog in him the way that he has.
Only Tennessee can have me where I'm like, season's over, moving on to baseball season to like, oh, this is an absolute Final Four team. Like, we're so back. I'm like, oh, this is the Final Four team. Like, I feel
like I saw you do that like 3 times with the Falcons in games this year too.
No, I don't think so. I will say, shout out to the Cowboys for preventing us from hiring Bill Belichick this afternoon. I appreciate that. So that should be good. No, but I guess the last thing we'll say on the Tennessee Georgia and what this means, like, is it time now, or actually before this, how did you think the officiating was? Because I'm not the officiating complainer, but I was getting a little redneck mad at the house. Like, there was one call that was especially egregious, like where Zakai's like I think it was Zakai on the ground, and they called a jump ball where there's a Georgia player just on top of him, and the ball, like, they called a jump, and I'm like, I don't know what else Zakai's supposed to do, but the dude's literally on top of Zakai without the ball. I thought this was they were letting a lot of stuff go. I just, look, not to go full Tennessee redneck mad here, but I thought this was the free throw disparity. There was some home cooking in this one too that we should give Tennessee credit for withstanding.
I try not to be the officiating guy too, and I tweeted about it a couple times yesterday, and I probably deleted a couple other tweets because I didn't want to be the officiating guy. And like I saw all these people at Mississippi State complaining about the officials on Tuesday, and I thought Jonas Aidoo's 5th foul was probably pretty questionable. But that what happened at Mississippi State fell in the realm of you were on the road in the SEC.
Yeah.
You're not, unless you're Kentucky, which we saw in unbelievable fashion yesterday, you're not going to get a good whistle. And Mississippi State was the aggressor in that game. So that was just naturally going to happen. This game, Georgia, as I just previously noted, had no rim defense and no rim offense. And some of the calls were pretty unbelievable. And some of the ones that stood out to me were just like the continuation. Silas DeMurray had a drive. in the first half where he got fouled at the 3-point line and it was called an and one. And then and you mentioned this guy jump ball. The one that I thought was worse was the Jemai jump ball. When Jemai gets a defensive rebound and gets tackled as the guy going after the ball, and it gets called a jump ball and gives Georgia the ball back in, you know, what I think was a tie game or maybe a 1-point game in like 3 minutes. A huge call. So yeah, I try not to be that guy, but Tennessee got an inordinately bad whistle even for playing on the road in the SEC, I thought, yesterday.
Final thing on Tennessee basketball before we go into this week here, Ryan. Freddie Dillione gets a lot of first half run. I thought the main thing that sticks out with him, and he flashes in this regard, he has no fear pushing the ball and driving inside. Like, that guy is totally comfortable doing things that Tennessee just does not have. Like, even Zakai, when he's driving, he's looking to pass. Like, Zakai is keeping his eyes up. He's looking around to see if Josiah is in the corner, Vescovi is in the corner. Like, he's not looking to score. He'll take it if he's there. But, I mean, Zakai would rather shoot a deep three than shoot really close to the rim when he's navigating inside. DeLeon is looking to draw contact. And he got a no call at one point where he gets smacked in the head. It was early in the game on a fast break.
Transition.
Yes. Yeah. And he just is looking for it. But I think he was careful because, like, Barnes going to pull me if I go a little angry here, if I really get emotional about this non-call. But I thought he flashed. I mean, he got crossed up at one point on defense early. But, like, look, he's going to have to play to work through that and also build his confidence. Like, that's a tough environment, everything else. Like, I thought DeLeon flashed a little bit. And then Cam Carr, you wonder, is he, because he's obviously not in the rotation, JB Estrella, those guys, he's not. Barnes has shrunk his rotation big time coming out of CC play. But, I mean, Gainey is just, it's over. Like, it's just, he takes one shot, no, he misses it. He has no confidence whatsoever. I don't know what you do here from Office Space with Gainey at this point, because DeLeon at least adds something. I know what DeLeon's going to do. DeLeon's going to attack. And DeLeon, I think, will start drawing fouls, and I think he will have value. And we talked about it off air. He should be the Zakai primary backup ball handler. I think we're now at that point where he needs to get those minutes. When Zakai sits, I think those need to go to DeLeon. And then Cam Carr, it's like, are you sure Cam Carr can't do what Gainey's doing at this point and give him some run? I don't know. Are we too hard on where Gainey is at as a player right now, or especially compounded with Vescovi just shooting the way he is to this point, that I think there is a fair argument that Carr needs to be reinserted into this rotation, especially for Gainey at this point.
I don't think you're being unfair about where Gainey is right now. I think it's maybe a little bit unfair to just like write it off that it's impossible for him to turn it around. I'll start with Freddie. That was my biggest takeaway from the Mississippi State game, is what you said, is that if Zakai is not on the court, Freddie needs to be the backup point guard. Like, that's a definitive role, and look, like, that's not committing too much because Zakai plays so many minutes.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's ideal. You would hope that can grow into him taking some of Jordan Gainey's minutes and playing the two spot some. I'm a little skeptical of how those two guys fit on the court together. You know, Freddie and Zakai are just both so ball dominant. That I not that it can't work, but I'm just unsure of exactly how that works. Now, yeah, I mean, the way Gainey's playing right now, like, it's just tough to have him in there, and I don't think Cam Carr is an answer from a shooting standpoint. Like, I don't think he's gonna come in and be like some massive upgrade over Vescovi or Gainey from as a whole as a shooter. But again, Gainey's struggling, so I don't think it's crazy to give him a look. I still think if you asked me right now, the four freshmen, Tennessee's playing in the Sweet 16, rank the probability of them playing 7 minutes in this game, I would probably have Cam Carr last. Still. Because I think Freddie's growing into that role, and I think they need one of Cade Phillips or Estrella to step up and be able to give them some minutes. I don't know which one it is, which one it'll be. I wish they could put Cade Phillips' game in JP Estrella's body. I think that's what they need, the toughness and physicality Cade Phillips plays with in JP Estrella's frame. I just struggle to see the path for Cam Carr, even though you laid it out. I'm just a little skeptical. I'm just not sure he's really there yet.
Well, to start SEC play, Gainey is 1 for 7. Excuse me. He has one total 3 to this point. He's shooting on the road just as a whole this year, like on the road. Doesn't even have to include SEC play. 24% from 3. It's a lot of threes. I mean, it's just been like, there's just no other way to put it. Like, unfortunately, it's like he's been a disaster. And it hasn't mattered because you have gotten a lot of great play across the board. And like you said, he can still turn around. but I do wonder how much longer you do this before other guys also on the team look around where they're like, because I think that could be natural, right? Where if you're Carr, you're like, or DeLeon, you're like, what, like, obviously coaches on staff, like, what more, like, or why am I not getting a look here? Why, like, how much longer can the struggles really go before you're like, look, we got to make a change. Like, we have to show that we're willing to go a different way if you're not playing well, regardless of who you are. Because, like, you do with Triple J. Like, Triple J did not have it, and he's a super senior and everything else. Like, it's, I mean, confidence from Rick Barnes, and he has that kind of respect where he can be like, nope, sorry, don't care. This is a whoever's playing well, I'm riding, and Meshack was who we rode over Triple J at the end. Like, I don't know. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah, I mean, he played 13 minutes yesterday, so it's not like they're leaving him out there to play 20 minutes a night. So
I mean, 13 minutes matter. Those 13 minutes matter in these games.
Yeah, certainly
these
they
are
do.
Close games. These are going to be a lot of close games, and that could be like if it -6 in those 13 minutes, that could be a difference beating Kentucky.
Yeah, I don't see the night and day answer. I mean, can't you? Yeah. You said he's 1 of 7 from 3 on the road, or an SEC
play
1 of 7
and
3.
SEC,
yeah. I mean, that's a bad number. Cam Carr shooting 2 of 8 against worse teams. So again, where's the immediate answer? But no, I would say from a pure, not necessarily a matchup standpoint, because I think that would still be defending, good physical post players would be Tennessee's biggest issue. But from where like the weak link in the rotation is, it's no doubt who's going, besides Jemai Meshack, who's going to play that second guard spot off the bench.
Ryan Schumpert, switching to football here. If the Vols land Heard, the offensive tackle, which is still, we don't know when that might be officially announced. It seems like everything is pointing to Tennessee winding up with the former 5-star offensive tackle from LSU. I mean, the cousin's already in the boat with, is it Jamarius Heard? Jamarius Heard, right? And then it's Zalance Heard, who'll be coming in, going by Lance. But part of the class, Rome, Georgia. He might be on offensive line, might be defensive line. We'll see what he does once he gets to campus in a full off season, this, that, and the other. But I mean, if Tennessee lands Heard and he's your left tackle going into next year, you move John Campbell to right. Are you comfortable with where Tennessee is going to be with the offensive line going into 2024 if they end it just with Heard?
It's a scale thing, but yes. Like I think Tennessee would have upgraded their offensive line over last year, in my opinion. If you land Heard, now is that good enough to win the SEC? No, I don't think so. Unless Nico's just unbelievable and can do a lot of the same things Hendon Hooker did. Expanding plays and making stuff off script, which we've seen some of. But when you're talking about what Tennessee was going to be able to fix it in this offseason, I don't think they could have done too much better. Sure, you'd probably like to add another body at guard. I'm forgetting the guy's name, but the kid from Armand, Reed Adams, I think was his name, the kid from Kansas who went to A&M. I think you would have liked from the fact that he's a solid guard and can also play tackle if called upon. But as a whole, I mean, bringing the guys they brought back and really trading Mincy for Heard, if obviously they got to land Heard, they got to make that official. To me, that would be a no doubt upgrade and of what you were going to do in one offseason to make your offensive line better next year. I don't think they could have done a ton. Now, is that where it needs to be long term? No, but from what they could have done this offseason, I think that's about as good as you could have hoped for.
And we'll see on Sprague's. He hasn't officially announced as of this recording, but it seems like by all indication he's back. And guard's just not as big of a concern here. Like Tennessee has shown they can put, a lot of different dudes. Jackson Lampley played great down the stretch for Tennessee. So, even if Sprague's
played great in the bowl game.
Yeah, but hey, maybe that's him turning the corner. Maybe Lampley is solid.
Certainly. And Iowa's better. Iowa's defense line is certainly a lot better than Vanderbilt, who he struggled against. So it wasn't like he did it against, nobody. So, and I think Sprague's you're probably just going to see. You're not going to get an announcement. He'll just be there on January 22nd when classes finally start. It's absolutely ridiculous that his classes still are a week away from starting for Tennessee. But yeah, and I say all that assuming Sprague comes back. And you probably wouldn't like to roll with Lampley and Andrej Karic as your 2 best options at guard going into next year. But
I think that's fine.
I believe, as I believe we said on last week's pod, Tennessee got by with Ollie Lane being their starting left guard for a full year. So, and it wasn't catastrophic. You can get by with it.
No, he was great.
Yeah. No penalties.
Look, outside of the Florida game, Ollie was rock solid. And when he was enforced, and also that dude deserves just an A for having to do a lot of stuff that I'm certain he was not expecting to do.
Yes, and that's a good point. When he was playing left guard,
like that guy
he is a team guy. When he was playing with the spot that he was prepared to play and worked at, he was very serviceable.
Yes.
It was really only at center when, again, was not his fault that Tennessee in year 3 of Josh Heupel hadn't developed a backup center. That wasn't Ollie Lane's fault. That's really only when things went real sideways for him.
Yeah. But, I think 2025 is the year that I've circled because you're going to have a situation where either Sham or Bennett Warren has to be one of the tackles. Like, that's a lot of pressure is on Ellerby to develop one of those two. Because Campbell's gone. There's no other John, and you're not just going to get another Heard in the portal. Like, that's just, you don't get 5-star offensive tackles just every year. That's not sustainable, and that's probably not likely. So you go into the expectation that Heard's at the left side, and then you go into the expectation that one of Bennett and Sham went at the right side. And then you go to the guard spots. Look, I mean, Bison Lang should be the starting center, barring he doesn't enter the portal. Year 3, it's a lot of time in the system. We're about to see what he develops and what 3 years behind Cooper has meant for him. That will be interesting. And then you look at the guards. Andre Karich is gone. Jackson Lampley will be gone. I mean, William Satterwhite might need to be him. Another guy you recruited, Max Anderson, is going to be in that conversation. Spraggs is gone. I mean, you look at it. 2025 is the ultimate indictment year in Glenn Ellerby and the staff. And I think this year, like you said, I think they're going to have a better offensive line in 2024 than they did in 2023. Granted, they get hurt because if not, like you're still looking at, great swing guy you want in your depth room, but Dane Davis cannot be your starting right tackle for a team that's expecting to make the college football playoff in 2024. But I think that is just, I'm so fascinated to see what that looks like in 2025. We got a long way to go, but I think Tennessee fans worry about the offensive line in 2024 for Nico because he got hit a lot, 6 sacks, whatever, in the Citrus Bowl. I just think if Heard's in the boat, you have Campbell, who was solid all year long, bringing back Cooper and company. I think they're going to be more than fine week in, week out.
No doubt, and it's tackle. Like, that's the spot that you circle. And obviously Heard, that's what was so exciting about Heard if Tennessee can land him, is that you have him for at least 2 years. But again, and obviously center, I would say too, there does seem to be some optimism around Bison Lang that he is developing into a legitimate backup for Cooper and a guy that can replace him. But it's just what we always talk about. At guard, it feels like you can get by and you can grab somebody in the portal. It's just, I mean, we've seen it this offseason of Tennessee having to explore the portal options. And obviously they haven't landed any of these guys, but there's a lot of serviceable guards out there. There's not a ton of serviceable offensive tackles. So to me, that's the big spot is, and you laid it out well with Sham and Bennett Warren. Those are the 2 guys you circle. It feels like you got to have one of those guys developed and ready to start in 25.
Absolutely. Ryan Schumpert, final thing on football if we do our baseball's player spotlight here. True or false? The Vols run game will be better in 2024 than in 2023 because I've seen a lot of Tennessee fans, and I think if you average, I'm curious if you believe this too. If we polled the average Tennessee Vol fan around Knoxville, like we go into Litton's tomorrow afternoon, Ryan. Granted, I mean, it's going to be pretty snowy, so I don't think anything's going to be open here in East Tennessee. But if we were, I think if we polled the average Vol fan at Litton's and we asked them this question, I think they would say it should be better. And my gut instinct is no. I actually think the running game will not be better. And I think people are going to be surprised at how underrated Jalen Wright was for Tennessee this past year. And where we both think about Dylan Sampson to this point as a lead back, not a change of pace guy. Not like he had some moments. He had a solid day against Iowa, but I'm curious if you think it will be better because I think if you ask most Vol fans, they would expect it to be better in 2024.
I saw this on the outline, and it's funny you say that. As I saw this on the outline, to me, it felt like the obvious answer was no. Like, Jalen Wright was really, really good. He was no worse than the 3rd best back in the SEC. I'd probably put him 2nd best back behind Cody Schrader and ahead of Ray Davis and Quinshon Judkins. So to me, I feel like it'll be worse. Not massively worse, like not an issue worse, but I don't think it'll be as good. And look, a lot of it depends on how Dylan Sampson develops. Like Jalen Wright came in as a dude that didn't have great vision and didn't play with great pad level and didn't break a bunch of tackles, and it was a real good runner between the tackles. He came in the way we've seen Dylan Sampson as a speed dude who wanted to run around everybody. I mean, Jalen Wright had in his freshman year when he kind of got thrust into a bigger role when Tyon Evans had his injury transfer. I don't remember all the timeline of all of that. And he had some, hilariously bad vision reads. And it was pretty incredible how much he developed. Now, that was 2 years before he had his big breakout year, and I thought I know myself, and I think you were too, really high on Jalen Wright going into last year with some of the signs he showed the back half of the 22 season. And Dylan Sampson's a great playmaker, just not sure he's a great running back yet. So a lot of it depends on how much more he develops, how much better he can get in the offseason, and you can say the same for Cam Seldon, because those dudes complement each other really well. They're two completely different changes of pace. But yeah, my initial instinct or natural instinct is that it'll be worse, just not a ton worse.
And it won't matter as much if Nico is Nico. Now, it will matter if the receivers struggle just as much as they did this past year. Like if the receivers are still having those kind of issues and the running game takes a step back, then you're in a precarious situation, I think, in Knoxville week over week. But I just think Jalen Wright, he's an NFL back, and I'm not sure. We'll see with Dylan Sampson. I think, like you said, they're so different between him and Cam Seldon. I think it's actually more about Cam than it is about Dylan, because I think we know what Dylan Sampson is. I don't think there's another level. Like we saw Jalen Wright just unlock another level year over year and build on stuff. I think we have a pretty good idea of what Dylan Sampson is. I don't think we have any idea what Cam Seldon could be. I think the potential is higher as a running back at Tennessee. I think the ceiling is significantly higher for him than Dylan. And I think that's the biggest difference is because you ran Jabari Small at the number 2 guy. It wasn't Dylan Sampson who was the backup for Jalen Wright last year. So if Cam Seldon is a significant upgrade, change of pace guy from Jabari Small, then I think the running game will be better. Like if you are able to get just 75% of Jalen Wright from Dylan Sampson, but Cam Seldon is a humongous upgrade from Jabari Small in terms of just electricity and keeping, just scaring opposing defenses from series to series, then there's a path to this running game being better. So I think for me, it falls more on Cam Seldon than Dylan Sampson.
That's probably fair, just from the standpoint of I don't think we really know what Tennessee has in Cam Seldon at all. We didn't see him much this year. I mean, we didn't know what position he was going to play before he got to Tennessee, whether it was going to be receiver and running back, because of just how interesting or different or how many multiple things he did in high school. So, yeah, I can see that, and I still think there's some variance of what Dylan Sampson can be as a true running back, but you don't have the depth, and you look at who's their third back. Injuries. Tennessee got really blessed this year. And the 1 year when Tennessee really could have afforded a running back injury, they stayed healthy the entire year. And you look ahead to next year, and certainly Peyton Lewis is a really talented dude, and Khalif Keith has been on campus for a year. But who's Tennessee's third back? What did they give him? What happens if there's an injury? There's a lot more questions about the running back room going into next year. And obviously, when you have questions, it's not always a bad thing, and it's just more about a variance of the ceiling and the floor. And I think that's very true about Tennessee's running back room going into next season.
I don't disagree. Final thing here, Ryan Schumpert, weekly baseball player spotlight we're doing ahead of the college baseball season, just over a month away here. Dylan Dreiling, what makes him great, why he'll be the everyday left fielder, and how he has evolved as a player since he first stepped on campus, and why Tennessee fans should be very excited about his future in Knoxville.
Well, to start, what he's good at, what's there to excite about, I'll go back to something that Griffin Merritt said last year when talking to us, maybe the Vanderbilt game when Dylan Dreiling, I guess that would have been it, when Dylan Dreiling hit one of those home runs in the ninth inning that got Tennessee back in the game, and Griffin Merritt ended up hitting the walk-off. I think he had the walk-off in that game. Certainly a big home run, and he was like, Dylan Dreiling is a dude that gives tips to other hitters and they listen to, and you're talking about tips as far as what they're seeing from the pitcher standpoint. And you're talking about a true freshman who didn't start and was coming off the bench in that game late, or coming out of the dugout late. And he had, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, ridiculous stats as a pinch hitter last season, incredible weapon versatility. So he's just, and I say all that to say, just a natural hitter and has really good hitting instincts. He can hit for average, he can hit for power. There's a lot to like there, and I think the question, as always, is the question for one of these guys stepping up into a bigger role is how do they handle being out there every single day? How do they handle being more scouted? We'll still see exactly what his role is, but, and potentially in his case, how does he handle being the number 2 to number 5, a hitter in the middle of the lineup or the top of the lineup that people circle, as opposed to a fringe starter or a pinch hitter? Like, that changes things. The other thing, and where I think he's probably grown the most, is just what he's done defensively. He was not much of a skilled defender when he got to Tennessee. I know that was a huge emphasis for him after his first fall. I remembered him talking about him going home I'm trying to remember where he's from.
Kansas, right?
Yeah, it's Kansas, yes. They had all those guys. They had Stanwich from Illinois, Chapman from Colorado, and him for Kansas. And talking about him going home over Christmas break and, like, working on his defense every day and fielding, and me just thinking, man, being outside working as a defender in December in Kansas sounds awful.
So I think Tennessee baseball, because that man has that dog in him. If you're doing that, all about it.
Yeah, so I think he's a really mature player, and that's where you've seen, that's what there is that's already really good about him, and that's also where you can see him growing and improving, and why he's stepping into a role that, it looks like he'll certainly be in Tennessee's starting lineup, and is certainly the odds-on favorite to be a starting left fielder.
Yeah, I mean, I think that should be the case. He is just going to continue. Tennessee fans are going to be like, is that Drew Gilbert or is that Dylan Dreiling? Like, it's going to be one of those, because he has the same build. He has the same kind of personality, it seems like. I don't think anyone will ever have the same kind of intensity that Drew Gilbert had, and I miss it every day. But I do think Dreiling has some... He's just not really scared. Like, he was in some huge pinch hit roles this past year. Tony called him, clearly trusted him. He seems like he's going to be a high OBP guy always while he's at Tennessee. I think he's just a smart hitter and just going to be a pain to get out. Maybe the best version is like he's a cross between Dreiling and Dickey, where Dickey was like that, where Gilbert
and Dickey.
Yeah, like, I think that's how that would be my best case scenario for Dreiling, is some combination between that, where Gilbert just had more of the power and raw power, I think, that I don't necessarily think Dreiling will ever be, because I think part of Dreiling's appeal is, like, I think he just wants to bat like 345, like at the college level, and I think that's possible for him to be that kind of Jared Dickey high average pain in the butt to get out from the lefty side of things. And I think Gilbert was like, I'll sacrifice average while swinging for the fences more often than not, especially when he got moved in that 4 hole. But I don't know. That's my gut, is Dreiling some kind of cross between those two.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, you kind of saw the way you're describing that cross. I think you kind of saw Gilbert become that, like his junior year. Gilbert, I mean, let's not let it be forgotten that he had like the second highest batting average in the SEC his junior year. He became so much better hitter from his sophomore year to his junior year. And yeah, Dreiling, like, he doesn't have the brashness that Drew Gilbert has, and maybe we see more of that as he steps into a bigger role and like proves it. But he does have the intensity. Like, that's where I think you're on the nose with it. I think he's a really, really intense guy and a really competitive guy in the same way. So a lot to be excited about with him. And again, he's one. You look at the Tennessee lineup and we talk about it, how it should be so much better, and I think it will be so much better. And usually when you say that, you have a lot of guys back. And Tennessee has some guys back, but really I think where more of that excitement comes from, certainly the transfer portal guys in Amick and Peebles, but it's guys like Dreiling and it's guys like Kavares Tears who we've seen a little bit of it from and have been on campus for a little bit, that seem really poised to step up and take a big step forward.
I'm excited. He's locked in at the left field spot. We'll see how he hangs in there defensively, but I'm not really worried about Dreiling in left field going into next year. He's like one of the ones I've penciled in that, like, I would be very surprised if Dreiling's not a really good everyday player for Tennessee this year.
Yeah, no, I feel
where do you think he bats in
similarly.
the order?
Yeah, I think that's some of that will be just interesting. Of again, Tennessee's gonna have a ton of lefties, so like, how does Tony Vitello stagger that, which we've seen he likes to do. Second is the spot that I think really makes a lot of sense for him, because he has some power, but he also gets on base at such a high rate, and it feels like you're going to start the season.
Where does Hunter Hensley go in this scenario? 1?
Maybe 1. I mean, I'm trying to think it all through, but it feels like you have 3, 4, 5 is some version of Christian Moore, Billy Amick, and Blake Burke.
Cannon Peebles. Oh. Blake Burke should not be around 3, 4, 5 until proven otherwise.
Look, I get why you say that, but again, Blake Burke was one of Tennessee's 2 best hitters in fall practice, and that's how coaches are going to be.
He can't hurt me again. I won't do this until he proves it. I can't do this. Call me in March. Like, I need to see SEC play Blake Burke.
I get that, but you're not going. I completely get that. But when you're talking about where things are going to start at the beginning of the year, you're going to do what you see in practice. And he was, again, really good. And it was, and like he did a lot of this in the fall 2 years ago too. But like it wasn't just power. Like his OBP, his batting average was really good. So I don't know. There's a lot of intriguing options for the batting order, and I've had my hands full with football offseason and basketball that I haven't sat down and figured it all out.
Ryan Schumpert over here just making excuses for not grinding the fall camp tape here.
That's the problem. We're so far away from fall camp. College baseball is so absurd in so many ways, and chief among them is the fact that the actual preseason that matters most, and the biggest conclusions to get drawn from coaches happens 4 months before the season starts, and then they come back for like 4 weeks, 3.5 weeks in practice in the dead of winter. He gets started in the full, more full team stuff, and it'll be snowing this week, and it's like you don't even draw as many conclusions from that. So I don't know.
And guys, college baseball it's a brutal thing, man. College baseball is brutal because these kids who come back for fall camp, and you look at the numbers, you're like, holy crap, they're bringing back how many walk-ons? And you're like, because it's like it's just weird. College baseball is weird, but it's also just like the Hunger Games on SEC campuses right now.
It's like Bear Bryant Alabama football rosters before they put scholarship limits on.
Yeah,
it's just got like bringing in 50 dudes on scholarship every signing class. That's what college baseball is.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I would watch it. Like, just Tony needs to amp it up. Like, he just drops a ball somewhere. He's like, go get it. It's like just really messes with him a little bit, but I don't know. Ryan Schumpert, go check out RockyTopInsider.com today if you're not already. Bookmark it for all Vol fans. If you've not already done so, great daily coverage from Ryan and Jack and Rick and the team over there on basketball, baseball, even though kind of waiting for some more baseball content here, Ryan. I was looking for it the other day and I need some more baseball content, but I'll allow it because this basketball team looks like a Final Four team right now. And also, obviously, because football is supreme in this town, always and forever. All kinds of great content as well over there. Ryan Schumpert, always a pleasure. And I will talk to you next week.